Hello, everybody, and welcome in live to another edition of Texas Longhorns Live here at the Voice of College Football, brought to you by FanDuel. Again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. I really appreciate you guys jumping on and joining us. Tommy, you are new here, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll jump right into it.
Yeah. So I'm Tommy Brzee. Nice to meet everyone. Born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, as you can probably see from the flag behind me. Been a Texas fan my whole life. So both my parents went there. Been a Texas fan for as long as I can remember. Went to school actually at Georgia, so a little bit of a conflict that week, but for the most part, always been a Texas fan and always kind of bleed burnt orange.
Yeah, we appreciate you jumping on board with us, and let's jump right into it. So, how the portal class fits in all together for Texas going into next year. Obviously, Texas landed one of the top 10 portal classes in the country. And you need that, especially in the SEC with a couple of their class they put together, especially LSU putting together a strong class. So let's jump right into it. We're not going to talk about the specialists, guys. We know how they fit in. They're going to be starters, and there's not too much breaking down to do there, honestly. Let's start out by the position groups, and let's just start out with, honestly, the one that worries Texas fans the most and should, the offensive line. So, Tommy, how do you think these three guys fit in Melvin Siani, Jonte Newman, and Dylan Sikorsky?
Yeah, I think Melvin Siani is probably the easiest of the bunch to fit in there. He's probably going to start at right tackle. I think that's pretty confident from pretty much everyone around there. Obviously, Trevor Gooseby comes back. He's going to be your left tackle. Melvin Siani probably comes in at right tackle, which probably kicks Brandon Baker over inside, whether that's left guard or right guard. Kind of unknown right now, but it might fit him a little bit better. So I think that almost answers your right tackle, sort of a question mark coming into the 2026 season, but it might also help you on the interior, kicking Brandon Baker inside and hopefully making for a little bit more depth. As for the other two guys, I think they have to be depth pieces, especially Jonte Newman. I think if he sees the field, probably have a couple of different injuries on the offensive line, a lot of different moving parts at that point. So Dylan Sikorsky is an interesting player. Probably was brought in to be a little bit more developmental and take a little bit more time with him. I wonder if they kick, maybe Jaden Chapman inside to play guard as well, along with Brandon Baker, and just say, we're going to be really good at pass protecting, and that's the way we're going to do business. One way or another, Dylan Sikorsky will have a chance to start. You kind of hope he's a depth piece, but it'll all depend on how it all shakes out.
No, I agree. I've talked on the Dylan Sikorsky piece of if he's your left guard going into next year, I think this portal season, it wasn't a failure, obviously, but it's like a C grade for me.
Yeah,
He shouldn't
yeah,
be a
absolutely.
starter because Oregon State, like he wasn't good enough to play there. If you go read their boards and what they were talking about with him, he's one of those guys where they kind of were okay with seeing him go, and they kind of expected him to be a backup at Oregon State. So you're talking about a guy that is competing at Oregon State for playing time. He shouldn't be starting on a team that is going all in because that's what they're doing for the national championship with Texas. So to me, he has to be a depth piece. He should be your swing guard to me, guys. That's how I look at him. So if someone gets hurt, whether that's Brandon Baker and then whoever starts at left guard, then he should be the guy that fills in there. That's what he should be this year. And then next year, he should be the guy. Hey, if he has to start, I'm cool with that. Jonte Newman, to me, is long term. We're not even talking next year. We're probably talking 2 years from now. So I agree with you. Melvin Siani is plug and play. Put him at right tackle. You put Brandon Baker at right guard. You put Trevor Gooseby at left tackle. You put Connor Robertson at center. And I like that four. The fifth spot's going to be a question. I don't know about the left guard, but do you disagree with the Dylan Sikorsky piece at all? Or do you have the same worries that I have?
I do. I think he's one of those guys that if you can get him a little bit stronger, get him a little bit more physical, he can be a really good run blocker. He's very, very solid. He doesn't necessarily get pushed off the ball, but he's also not going to pancake the guy in front of him either. So I think they probably end up. You probably want kind of a run first, run blocking type guy at one of those guard positions.
I think we lost Tommy there, but I agree. I think you need someone, a good run blocker, and it's going to be interesting if it is Sikorsky. He is a bigger guy, so that is a positive. But the problem is, I think there's a lot of Connor Stroh in his game to where, it can be a pretty big issue, guys. And it's going to be very interesting to me if he's athletic enough to play the position. So we'll have to see about that, but it's going to be very, very interesting if that is the case. So that does it for the offensive line and how they fit in. Let's go over to the running back position with Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers. We might have gotten Tommy back here.
Sorry
Tommy, are
about
you
that.
back with us? Oh no, you're good. You're
Yeah,
good.
sorry
You're
about
good.
that.
We're just moving over to the running backs right now. Hollywood Smothers and Raleek Brown. So, who are you more excited about in this? Because it's mixed. I think it's 50-50 in the fan base, but I want to know your opinion. Like, who do you think is running back one out of these two?
I lean Hollywood Smothers. He feels like the guy. The biggest difference between these two, they're both, plus players when you talk about pass catching. They're both better in between the tackles than you probably think, but that guy's they're 195, maybe 200 pounds. But Smothers is a guy 4.3 yards per carry after contact. So a little bit more of that physical runner, a little bit more of the ability to get the yards after contact compared to Raleek Brown. Raleek Brown's kind of your Jaden Blue 2.0 almost. He's a guy that can catch passes out of the backfield. If you give him one crease, he's probably out the door for 6. So he's a very, very dangerous back. I tend to believe Hollywood Smothers is more of your RB1, but they both can be RB1. And I think that's the great piece about picking up both these guys is one, hypothetically, worst case scenario, could go down. You slide the other one into getting full RB1 carries. Maybe James Simon fills in at RB2 and you kind of just go from there. So it's a really good 2 pickups. Maybe you don't have that power back of sorts, but I think you have 2 guys that can play that RB1 role. I'd lean towards Hollywood Smothers in the long term, at least.
No, I do as well. He was one of those guys. We made a video, I don't know, 2.5, 3 months ago when the portal was about a month out from opening. He was one of those guys that was talking about going in the portal that I wanted immediately when I heard the name because of the explosive nature that he has. I think he has 6 runs over 50 yards on the season. He also had like averaged over 4 yards per carry after contact. So really, really good football player. I really like Hollywood Smothers. I completely agree with you about, Jaden Blue, Raleek Brown. I think Jaden Blue probably has a little bit more top end speed, but they're very similar in the acceleration once they hit the hole. And I think Raleek Brown can also be that pass catcher that we kind of missed this year out of the backfield because Trey Weisner's not that good at it. CJ Baxter was never really good at it and definitely wasn't good at it this year because of the injury that he had the year before. So I like both these guys, but I agree. I think Hollywood Smothers is more your prototypical number one back. But I think both these guys bring a nature to this offense that we haven't had since Jaden Blue left. And honestly, we had for a while there and then stopped this past year because we didn't have anyone that, hey, at any time, if they catch the ball and they break a tackle, they could go to the house for 6. That was not something Trey Weisner, no offense to him, he's just not capable of doing. He doesn't have that
Yeah.
top end speed. And CJ Baxter was never really that guy, and he definitely wasn't that guy after the injury.
Yeah, and I'm specifically speaking about one specific play. Trey Wisner, when he breaks that one tackle and goes for about 45 yards against Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Raleek Brown houses that. Probably Hollywood Smothers houses that just because they have difference-making speed in open space. And Trey Wisner, great back. I think he's going to do great things at Florida State. But these 2 guys give you that just difference-maker speed that you really want. And with Arch Manning in the backfield as well, you have 2 guys that can go crazy speeds in open space and take up a ton of attention on the defensive side.
No, 100%. It's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot more 2-back sets. Hopefully, I think you're going to see a lot more full house sets. It was funny. I watched the Texas Tech highlights from a couple years ago when we beat them, 57-7 or something like that. And Keelan Robinson, it was Keelan Robinson, Jaden Blue, and I forget the other running back in the backfield, all lined up by Quinn Ewers. But it was a beautiful formation to get Keelan Robinson basically one-on-one with a linebacker. The linebacker lost him in the wash, and it was an easy touchdown. And I think that's kind of this formations and style you'll see Raleek Brown and Hollywood Smothers get the ball because they're capable of beating those guys easily in pass coverage. Like Jaden Blue. I mean, Jaden Blue, again, caught the 2 touchdowns versus Ohio State on linebacker. Like, we just didn't have that last year, guys. So it's exciting to get that back in the mix, and I think it will help open up other players as well.
Yeah, and it's not even to mention guys like Michael Terry, who is obviously a freak show athlete. You have Derek Cooper coming in, who probably a little bit later in the season, but can be a very, very dangerous player for you. So it's an incredible running back room, and I think these 2 guys just kind of lead the way.
I agree. Let's move over to the wide receivers and tight end. It's one of each. Cam Coleman and Mike Masunis from Michigan State. I think Michael Masunis is pretty underrated here, and I think he's going to put up way better numbers here than he did at Michigan State. I think he had 280 yards receiving last year at Michigan State, 287, I think. I think he'll end up with about 400 to 500 here at Texas. He's definitely a pretty good blocker too. If you watch the tape, I think there's a good chance actually. Out of the last couple guys we've had between Gunnar Helm, Jatavian Sanders, and Jack Endries, this could probably be the best blocking tight end you've gotten out of those four. So I'm excited to see what he looks like in this offense. What do you think about him?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A really, really good blocker. And I think, frankly, you might have three or four of the better blockers you've had at tight end in quite some time on this roster. When you talk about Masunas, Spencer Shannon can move people whenever he wants, really. And then Nick Townsend showed that he was a very, very willing blocker early on in his freshman season. And I think this is a guy that not only is going to do better in this type of approach compared to what Michigan State did, but he's going to open doors for guys like Nick Townsend, Amari Winston, all these guys that are uniquely athletic to do the things in the pass game that were kind of taken away from Texas. The tight end role was not nearly as dangerous as it was with Gunnar Helm. And I think whether it's Masunis going for 700 yards or him going for 300, Townsend going for 300, a couple of guys chipping in, it's going to be a much more dangerous position and a much more variable position for Texas this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think that the variable versatility type aspect is definitely the thing I'm most excited about, because you have Nick Townsend, who honestly I think should have played more last year, just because I don't think we really knew how to use Jack Endries. I was a big fan of Jack Endries coming in, but he didn't fit really what Sark wants to do with the tight end, whereas I think Nick Townsend did more. And it's funny, when someone that young comes in, you think, oh, they have to learn how to block. That dude's a nasty blocker. He's a really good blocker. So I think he should have played more anyways. And I think, like you said, you're going to have the versatility with these guys who can do both. Like Nick Townsend is a freak athlete. I think he ran a 10.9 200 meter. So that's freakish at 6'3", 6'4", 230 pounds. And then you have Michael Masunis from Michigan State. Definitely not that freak athlete, but a good blocker, but also kind of a possession guy as well, can break a couple tackles. So I like this tight end room, like the first two. Spencer Shannon, and then after that, it's going to get pretty iffy to me. Emory Winston, obviously coming back from injury, I don't know about, but I like the first two, and Nick Townsend, Michael Masunis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think you have 3 to 4 guys, depending on the status of Winston, that can just do both things. And you don't necessarily have to change up the play calls when they're on the field. You don't have to, help out Jack Endries in different situations where he is blocking. You can kind of leave those guys on islands and feel pretty confident that they can hold up.
Next up, we'll get to the best guy in the portal class. I think I don't know what the rankings have him now, but in my opinion, he's a top 3 or top 4 player at worst that jumped in the portal entirely this whole cycle, and that's Cam Coleman. I'll let you hit on this one. Like, what do you we know what he brings, but what else do you think that's being underutilized or under talked about that he brings to Texas?
Yeah, he's the clear wide receiver one. I think everyone knew that they had to go in and get one this offseason. The biggest thing to me is he has the 50-50 ball ability. The body control is out of this world. The hands are crazy. He's going to open so many doors for Ryan Wingo. He is a guy that pretty much every single snap, you're going to have to cheat the safety over that direction because you usually can't man cover this guy. It's just not the way that teams have been able to. It's not the way that most any team is going to be able to cover this guy. That opens doors for Ryan Wingo. That opens doors for Emmett Mosley, who I thought was going to be a really special player this season. Obviously, the injury kept him out for the majority of the year, but it's just a guy that takes one more attention and gives you one more numbers advantage in the pass game. And then that's a place where Ryan Wingo can be as dangerous as he can be. And he was already one of the best yards after catch guys in the country this past season. With Cam Coleman, that can almost go through the roof.
Yeah, I think that's what it's going to be interesting about, is the doors that Cam Coleman opens for the other guys, because he's going to draw so much attention, and it's going to be interesting. We too will tell us when we play Ohio State how a Matt Patricia deals with someone like a Cam Coleman. Is he going to double team? Is he going to just put the number 1 cornerback on Ryan Wingo and put the number 2 and the safety over top with a Cam Coleman like Bill Belichick used to do? We'll have to see, and that's going to be very interesting. And then that's going to tell you a lot about Ryan Wingo. Like, if Ryan Wingo thinks and he has the potential and the capability of being a wide receiver 1, he's going to have that chance going against the number 1 corner if that's how they do defend it, and he'll be able to put together pretty good tape on that. And I think Ryan Wingo down the stretch of the season was really good after the second half of the Georgia game. Like that was kind of like the delineation mark for me of you saw a different type of player, because the first half of that game he dropped a couple passes, and then from there he really, I think, only had one drop the rest of the season from the second half on. So I think him, and then my guy Emmett Mosley, I think is the most underrated, one of the most underrated receivers in the country. I think he does everything very well. He's a really good route runner. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's good, catching the ball. Obviously, that's a big thing to look at because Ryan Wingo and Cam Coleman both struggled with drops, and he's also a good blocker. So his issue is health. He's never been healthy. He was not healthy at Stanford. He was not healthy at Texas. He just had offseason surgery. But I think if Cam Coleman is who we think he is and Emmett Mosley stays healthy, I think there's a real chance that Emmett Mosley actually leads this team in receptions. I don't think he leads the team in yards, but I think there's a chance he leads the team in the receptions just with the amount of eyes drawn to Cam Coleman. So I think that's the biggest thing, all the eyes drawn to Cam Coleman in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you saw, it was Parker Livingston or it was Emmett Mosley, that was probably a decision that they had to make throughout this offseason. And I think they chose right. I think it's a difference maker in Emmett Mosley that just when you take eyes off of him can be an absolute difference maker for this team where you could have 3 games where Cam Coleman's your leading receiver, 3 games where Emmett Mosley's your leading receiver, 5 games where Ryan Wingo's your leading receiver. It's such a dynamic group. And then you got freshmen that are coming in that we'll talk about in a little bit, and guys like Khaleke Lockett that I think are going to be great players for you as well. So it's a wide receiver group that are led by probably the best top 3 in the country as far as I'm concerned, and then a depth group that is uniquely talented.
No, I think that's definitely like a possibility that this is the top best 3, our top 3 wide receivers on one team in the country. I think Ohio State obviously has had that for a while. And then they lost a couple guys in the portal. They lost Carnell Tate to the NFL, and it's not the same there anymore. It's going to be interesting because the thinning out of college football, I don't think you're going to be able to stack, 6 first-round picks possibly in a wide receiver room like Ohio State had at one time anymore. I don't think that's ever going to happen again. So I definitely, there's a possibility Texas does have the best trio in college football. It's going to be very interesting. Next up, we'll do the linebackers, Rasheem Biles, Justin Cryer, and Marcus Boswell, who did come over from Akron, the local hometown kid. That this is the positive thing of NIL. He gets to come back home, sit probably for a year, play a little bit this year, probably mostly special teams unless injuries do happen there, and then probably compete for playing time next year. So what do you think about this group overall?
I mean, Rasheem Biles is obviously the headline, right? And the second you turn on Pitt, he is the guy that catches your eye. He is an absolute freak of nature and definitely a guy that kind of checks a lot of the boxes that Anthony Hill did, especially when you talk about pass rush. He's a very, very good pass rusher from the second level, and he's really good in coverage, or at least solid enough to stick around. And Ty Anthony Smith showed in the Michigan game he's plenty good in that case as well. So I think those two together is a very, very formidable duo up front. And then you add a guy like Justin Cryer, who is very strong in coverage. It is a really, really good coverage guy from kind of that middle linebacker role. I think he's going to be really, really strong. And overall, you look at this group, I think a lot of people expected them to add 2 starting level linebackers, add 2 elite guys, and try to kind of rebuild this room. Think it shows the confidence that they have in a guy like Ty Anthony Smith to just add one Rasheem Biles to put next to him. Then you add Justin Cryer as kind of a backup piece. And Marcus Boswell, I tend to agree, is a developmental piece, probably on special teams a little bit this year, but is a really fun prospect that absolutely in 2027 and going forward could be a really fun player.
Yeah, I think it was smart to go get him because you need depth in that room. I mean, that room got absolutely decimated with Anthony Hill leaving, and then obviously the other guys transferring out and Leon Lafau and others. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know if there's a true, like Justin Cryer, I agree, is probably your candidate for the green dot as of this moment. It's either going to be him or maybe even Ty Anthony Smith. Those might be the 2 guys. I don't think Rasheem Biles gets that, but we'll have to see. But I agree. I was kind of in that camp of I thought there was a chance to get Rasheem Biles and Cade Ulibarri, who went to BYU. I think that would have been insane to get those 2 types of guys and then also have Ty Anthony Smith. I think you would have probably had the best linebacker tree in the country at that point. So it's going to be interesting because this room to me is still thin, and you're relying on a lot of younger guys here. Like Tyler Atkinson's going to have to come in and play like real football for you. He's going to have to matter in certain key big moments for you. And is he ready for that? I don't know. I know he's a freakazoid in high school with 180 tackles for 3 years straight. I mean, that's insane to have that, but I don't know if he's ready to play right away in the SEC. That's like one of those positions that's really hard to play and be physical at in the SEC, to come in right away and play meaningful snaps. So it's going to be very interesting. And if one guy gets hurt there, like if Rasheed Biles gets hurt, this goes to being a weak point. But I will say, linebacker is the one you can get away with, like position group on defense of, oh, this is the weaker group. You don't want to have that at defensive line. You don't want to have that at corner. Safety and linebacker is kind of the one where you can mask it a little bit. Now, once you get into the Final Four, if you're competing for that or a national championship, those teams are going to take advantage of it. But you can mask it up into that type of point. So we'll have to see here. But
Yeah.
I personally think they should have got one more big-time guy, but this is good enough if it stays healthy.
Yeah, I think the other piece of it is I tend to believe they just hired the best linebacker developer in the
Yeah.
country in Will Muschamp. So I think you have an opening here where if Ty Anthony Smith can build off what he did against Michigan and Rasheed Biles can stay healthy and Cryer obviously can be that other piece, I think it's as good as you can probably do, especially losing all the guys that they lost.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next up, we'll go cornerback. It's only one. It's Bo Masco. And again, this was another guy I had on my list of early guys that entered the transfer portal that I wanted. We got him. I think he's one of the 2 to 3 best cornerbacks that enters the portal. I like everything that he brings. I think he has good ball skills. I think he's physical. I think he's versatile. I think he can play outside. I also think he can slide down to the big nickel that's really big in the Will Muschamp scheme. So I really like this guy. What do you think about him, Tommy?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think he's a really interesting piece. And overall, I mean, the vast majority of the work done in quote unquote in the portal in the secondary was keeping guys around, and they kept 4 massive pieces around. And this guy that can compete for the starting job across from Cade Phillips at one of the outside positions. He could come down into the nickel spot as either a backup or a starter next to Wardell Mack. Maybe you slide Grayson Littleton back outside. Overall, I think you have 5 or 6 really, really talented, really high level corners that can slide all over the place. And you can kind of play around with quite a bit where you have Warren Roberson back, Cade Phillips probably playing the boundary corner, those two kind of holding that down. And the rest of them you can kind of play around with and do some different things with, especially Grayson Littleton, who has shown he's one of the more dynamic DBs we've seen in quite some time. So it's an incredible group, and I think there's just another great addition, especially a veteran addition to it.
No, 100%. I agree with that. Let's go to the defensive line, which rounds out the transfer portal class. Ian Giffard from Arkansas, big nose tackle. Again, this guy's going to go under the radar, but I put him in my top 5 guys that we landed in the portal because of the role he's going to play. And then Zion Williams, who Texas tried to get in recruiting for the longest time. I thought for sure he was going to commit to Texas. Well, that would have been last July, I believe. I said, I think it's going to happen in July. It never did. He ended up at LSU for, a vacation, basically, and then decided to come back to Texas. So what do you think about these 2 guys?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing here is they're space eaters. They're massive, massive humans that can absolutely eat up space. And when you look at Texas, the defensive tackle group is remarkably talented. Justice Terry, Hero Canoe, Alex January coming back for another year. It just frees those guys up to have one-on-ones where you can't handle the 315-pound or however big Ian Giffard really is. You can't handle that guy with one person. So you're going to have to give one-on-ones to these other guys that are really, really dangerous. We saw what Justice Terry could do as a pass rusher in that Michigan game. You free him up a little bit more, he could be an absolute game wrecker for you. So I think these 2 guys do exactly what you need them to do, which essentially just eat up space. Obviously, Williams is a little bit more of a project type guy, but at the end of the day, I think he's going to end up playing some snaps deep into the season for you.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting if they're going to put on weight on him and make him a nose tackle as well, or if they're going to make him an edge in this defense. I think that's a question with like 6 different guys on this roster. You're going to have to tell 2 guys just to be like, hey, listen, you're going to be a nose tackle as well. You're going to eat a lot and gain a lot of weight because Ian Giffard is, I believe, 386 is what he was listed on Arkansas. So he's almost pushing 400 pounds. So to me, if I'm just, crystal balling this thing, I think you're going to have him obviously at nose tackle, and then you're probably going to have a Murad Watson. That's the guy to me, the body type wise, that you say, hey, go put on 30 pounds. And I could see him being in the nose tackle because I see Alex January and Justice Terry more being edges in this type of Will Muschamp scheme. Even Zion Williams, to me, I don't know if he could put on 30 pounds. I think he's pretty close to max out. Josiah Sharma is another guy to me. He could put on 60 pounds. I mean, his shoulders are huge. If he wants to be a nose tackle, he can be a nose tackle. So I think the three guys that you'll see be nose tackles if they put on the right way will be obviously Ian Jafar, and then Murad Watson and Josiah Sharma. But Zion Williams is a tweener to me. It's going to be interesting how they use him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Josiah Sharma is another guy that I'm very excited about. Now, you didn't hear much from him his freshman year, but as you said, a massive dude that can get even more massive and be a huge force in this defense.
No, 100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Let us know how you think these portal players fit on this Texas roster. We really appreciate that. We'll jump on to some of these comments. David Keith Williams says, Justin Crier's about 6'1", 235, but all the other Texas linebackers, Ty Smith, Rasheem Biles, and Tyler Atkinson, are all around 6'2", 225. I'm not sure if that SEC or if that is SEC size, even though the linebackers are getting smaller. What do you think about that, Tommy?
Yeah, I definitely do think it helps Justin Crier be on the field a little bit more consistently when you talk about, especially early downs when they're a little bit more run heavy downs. I think the other part of it is, though, you have so many dynamic running backs, you have so many dynamic pass catchers in this conference that you're probably going to want guys that can play in zone coverage, that can be a little bit more athletic, that can do the things that Ty Anthony Smith did in that Michigan game. So they're definitely a little bit undersized. I think overall it's going to be relative wash, but it does help Justin Crier get on the field and maybe be that enforcer of that unit, so to speak.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, if you look around, football in general, you don't have these like big time running backs anymore. You don't have Derrick Henry's running around. You don't have Eddie George's like they don't really have those guys. Actually, now are playing defensive line basically because you look at the running backs, they're more Hollywood Smothers, Relief Brown. They want speed. Obviously, it helps, man. If I'm gonna have you take over.
No, it definitely does. It helps when you have those big time players that can, meet a bigger back in the hole. But you look around the conference, Ahmad Hardy is a freak of nature. That guy's kind of one of one in a lot of different ways. But for the most part, a lot of guys are leaning towards these speed backs because 9 times out of 10, if you can give them the opening, they can take it for a big time gain. And you find that most run games at this very moment are let's get 3 yards, let's get 3 yards, and then let's try to get 20 yards. And then we can open up a big time pass game where it's as opposed to the Derrick Henry way of thinking where you're thinking, I'm going to get 4, 4, 4. I'm just going to march my way down the football field. It's a lot of kind of spurt type run game. I think that's going to help you out, Wade. And I think that's part of the reason these linebackers are getting a little bit smaller because you have to combat more of the pass game rather than, running between the tackles, that physical approach that was there even, 10 years ago.
Yeah, we'll see if my voice decides to work because I have some type of illness that I'm getting over, so we'll have to see about that. But no, I mean, you handled that perfectly. I completely agree. Let's go. I agree with you on David Keith Williams. You talked about Elijah Bo Barnes. I'm a big fan. I wish he would have come back, but my guess is he got way too much money to go to Kentucky.
Yeah, they were attacking pretty aggressively in this portal cycle, and I think that's a guy that they felt that could start right away. I don't think Texas could give the same promise, so I think it makes sense from both sides, and have to imagine that the dollar figure was pretty nice.
100%. We are going to go to top 5 breakout players next. So this is going into next year, obviously. It doesn't have to be portal players, can be anyone. Tommy, I'm going to let you start on this. Who's your number 5?
Yeah, this might be wishful thinking. It might be me just hoping that this occurs. I'll go with Connor Robertson. I do think he's going to be a real solid player in 2026. He got so much better as he got, consistent reps at center throughout the offseason or throughout the season. Obviously, this offseason, he's going to have time with Arch Manning to get more comfortable with each other, to understand each other a little bit better, and to understand the offense a little bit better. When it comes to center, that's how you become elite, is you understand the offense, you understand the why. And I think he was still kind of working his way into that this past season. I think now he's in a good spot. And I think he understands that he's going to have to be a guy that steps up for this offense to be what it wants to be. I think he's ready to do that. He might not be, an All American or anything crazy. I think he's going to be a really serviceable center this upcoming season and be a really solid or a pleasant surprise for a lot of Texas fans.
Yeah, I agree. I think just knowing the scheme is super important. I think Jake Majors taught you that. Like, that guy's not super talented, but he's a he really knew the scheme and performed very well. I'm going to let you go with number 4 as well.
Yeah, I can roll through the five if you want. Number Jermaine Bishop Jr. I'll go with one of the freshmen here, and I just have him listed here as a football player. This kid's undeniable. There's really no other way to put it. Whether you want to line him up at wide receiver, whether it's slot or outside, you can line him up in the backfield as a running back and kind of those Ryan Niblett type packages. The kid is special. If you watched any of his games when he was playing Texas high school football, you fully understand that. A difference maker every single time he touches the ball. Could very well see him in the kick return game be a piece of that as well. Honestly, if I was trying to be Steve Sarkisian right now and line up some plays for him, I'd look what they did with Malachi Toney this last season over there in Miami. This is a really, really special talent. Not saying he's going to be able to throw passes down the field like Malachi Toney did, but this is a very, very special player. And even with the top 3 that we talked about, that could be the best 3 in the country. When you talk about those wide receivers, I think you're going to have a difference maker in this freshman that is going to be just too hard to keep off the field. I think he's definitely someone that can break out maybe a little bit later in the year, but be a big time player for you. Number 3, we talked about a little bit earlier. I think Nick Townsend's incredible. He's a very, very athletic kid and one of those guys that immediately understood what you had to do to be on the field as a tight end, especially in this offense. You have to be willing to block, and he was very willing to block from the jump. I believe it was the San Jose State game. He had the shot that got semi-viral around Longhorn Twitter where he just lays a kid out, and he is absolutely one of those guys that's going to be on the field, going to be physical. I also think he's a difference maker in the pass game. And I think the guys that we talked about, adding a guy like Michael Masunas, having Spencer Shannon, who is steady Eddie over there as a blocker, he can be your primary pass catcher, can Nick Townsend at tight end, and be a total difference maker for you. So those are the other 2 guys, Jermaine Bishop and Nick Townsend, at least on the offensive side, that I'm watching really closely.
No, and I think that's fair. I think Nick Townsend, for me, is probably number 1 heading in next year offensively, the guy that can break out the most, just because he didn't have many reps last year. Did you go through your whole 5?
I got 2 more on the defensive side of the ball that I can get into real quick.
I'll go with a couple of mine. Number 5 for me is Emmett Mosley. I mean, just obvious with that one. If he stays healthy, I think he's in for a really big year. Again, health is his biggest thing. He's had ankle issues at Texas and at Stanford. And then number 4 for me, man, also on the defense, or this guy is on the defensive side, Ty Anthony Smith. I think Ty Anthony Smith has a chance to be like a Buckist Award finalist. I don't think he's going to win it next year or anything like that, but I think he'd be really good. I'll let you go. God dang, man. I'll let you go.
No, just 2 more on the defensive side. Justice Terry, we talked about a little bit earlier, especially in this defense. He plays a little bit more of that edge type role. The kid's just incredible. And I think there is a big reason why they kind of swooped in on Georgia a little bit late in that recruitment and tried to pick him off, because he is a difference maker. He is a guy that can do incredible things, especially in this defense. I think lends itself a little bit more to his abilities. And I think he can just be a nightmare for teams, especially later in the season. I think can be a massive player for you. And then my last one is another freshman, actually. I think Tyler Atkinson's a freak of nature. I think he's a guy that can come in and he won't be a starter right away by any means. I think he will get snaps in the very first game. I think he's going to get snaps against Ohio State. I think he's a very talented kid. Does need some refining, of course. I think everyone coming up from the high school level, especially when you're that physically gifted and have been able to kind of get by on that to a certain extent throughout your high school career, you always need a little bit of refining. But I think he's a guy that just won't be denied, will be on the field pretty early, and will be a guy that might very well be a very consistent player or maybe even a starter later on in the season. I think he's a total difference maker, an Anthony Hill type player at linebacker for you for the next at least 3 years.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, like I said, if he's able to do that just right off the bat, because if he is, that's even more impressive than Anthony Hill, in my opinion, because they kind of just let Anthony Hill run around and cause danger and go after the quarterback. But if they're actually asking him to play linebacker and be in a specific role, that's really high-level football. Man, I don't know. Number 3, Cade Phillips. I expect Cade Phillips to put up a really, really good year next year. I could see him going pro after next year. I think Grayson Littleton, obviously stood out this year, but I think Cade Phillips could have that type of impact next year. So I'm super excited to see him in the defense, especially a Will Muschamp defense with Blake Gideon, back there manning the secondary again. I think that's really big because last year, guys, I want to be honest, I think Dwayne Akina completely got passed by in coaching. I think Blake Gideon is a gigantic upgrade, and I'm glad he's back. Number 2 is Justice Terry for me. I think Justice Terry has, man, I don't even know the floor, I would say. Just what I saw at the end of last year of him coming in versus Georgia. I know it's a block game, but he made 3 tackles for loss in 3 straight plays. That's not normal for a guy that barely played and you throw him in there and he does that. He is going to be an all SEC type level player. I think he's got the chance to win an Outland trophy, which we saw guys like Tavondre Sweat do. We saw guys like Kelvin Banks do. I think he's that talented. I think he's that special. And then number 1 for me, I put Lance Jackson in that same breath as well. I think Lance Jackson is a guy, when you saw him committed to Texas before he played Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, there were pictures of him. And he could have played then, like body type wise. It was more of knowing the game, where to be, how to play football. That's going to happen at some point in this next year. It may not be the first game, but it's going to click. And when it clicks, you're going to see an all SEC type level player. So those are my 5, along with yours as well, Tommy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on a lot of those. I think Emmett Mosley is one of those guys that the second he came on the field, just felt like the offense opened up so much. I think he's going to be a difference maker. Justice Terry, we're absolutely on the same page. Cade Phillips, like you said, I think that guy is a Thorpe Award winner level player. I think he is an absolute difference maker, especially in an offense in a defense, that's going to ask him probably to play a little bit more man coverage, but also play the ball a little bit more and be a little bit more aggressive. And I think he really likes to do that. So I think he's going to be a difference maker on that defensive side.
That does it for our top 5 players to break out next year. Again, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Excuse my coughing. I'm in Ohio. It's cold. I'm sick. Not fun. So again, guys, do that. Also drop us your top 5 breakout players for next year as well. So we may as well just jump into this. Way too early, and I put way and too early in there because it is way too early. Predictions for next year. Tommy, I'll let you start off with this one as well. Like you said, you put these into categories, so let me know the categories of the games you put them in.
Yeah. So first, you got your layup games: Texas State, UTSA. If you lose either of those games, we got a big problem, and a lot of things are going to change very quickly. I have the SEC should wins: Mississippi State, Arkansas. Those are 2 teams that are kind of in a little bit of flux. I love Kamario Taylor. I think that's a really, really talented player and will be fun to watch next year. I think the team overall is not going to be downright elite. In Arkansas, new coach there, a lot of moving parts. I think it's going to be a mismatch. So I think you're in a good spot there. That does come between the LSU and A&M games. So interesting dynamic, but overall, those are the 2 games that you should win in the SEC. Then you have a lot of battles and a lot of kind of different level battles. Number 1 to me, maybe the toughest game on the entire schedule at LSU. Late in the season, you have Sam Leavitt probably works out the kinks early in the season. We'll see. I'm a little bit questionable of Sam Leavitt in a number of different ways. I think the defense looks like one of the top units in the country with Whit Weeks coming back, adding a couple of guys, obviously from Ole Miss, as Lane was going to do. I think that's going to be a fight, especially over in Baton Rouge. And you can imagine that's probably going to be a night game because it's a home game and for LSU. But then you have Ohio State. Obviously, you have Julian Sayin going to be a little bit more confident. Bo Jackson showed that he was a really, really strong running back at the end of last season. He'll be back. Jeremiah Smith is Jeremiah Smith. So that's going to be a problem no matter when you play him. Offensive line and defense, I have some questions there, but overall, it's Ohio State. It's going to be a nightmare. Ole Miss is going to be, I think Trinidad Chambliss is going to be the quarterback there. I think you find that these legal battles tend to go the way of the player. So if he's on the football field, they can beat just about anyone. Definitely some defensive questions with the departures late in the portal cycle. But overall, when that guy's on the field, it's a dangerous, dangerous game. Florida's an interesting team. That all falls on Aaron Philo, a kid coming in from Georgia Tech. I think he's a really talented kid. Obviously, I'm in Atlanta, so have watched him quite a bit. Really, really talented. They have skill players that are about as good as you're going to find in the country with Jaden Ball and that wide receiver core that they have. But some O-line questions definitely for sure. The young quarterback overall questions. So that one's a little bit easier. And then you have at Tennessee and at Missouri. Two games that are road games in the SEC, tough games. I have some questions about Austin Simmons at Missouri, see how that fully works out. Added Caden Lee, one of his wide receivers. So a fun team, but maybe not an elite team. And then at Tennessee, without Joey Aguilar, I think that's a big question mark. So I feel a little bit more confident about those last two. I think LSU and Ohio State are going to be your absolute fights that you're going to have to win. And then you just have the rivalry games. They're kind of in their own category because you never really know what to expect. You got Oklahoma, you got A&M now. They made kind of a habit of beating these teams the last couple of years, so hopefully that continues. But overall, I battled between a 10-2 and 11-1 right here. I'll lean towards 10-2 until those offensive line questions are answered early in the season. I probably won't feel fully confident that this offense can really get off the ground the way that they're capable. If they pitch a shutout and play great football against Ohio State, then it might change very quickly to 12-0 or 11-1 or something crazy. But as of right now, I'm probably sitting at 10-2. I think between Ohio State, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, LSU, A&M, you probably go 3-2 in those games, maybe 4-1.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize, I think they play 8 or 9 games in a row to end the season. So, yeah. I mean, that's really hard to do on that schedule. I agree. I think there's like 4 layup wins. Texas State, UTSA, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. If you're not 4-0 in those games, like, what are we doing? Yeah. And then Florida to me is like somewhere in between that and all these other teams. I agree with you because I don't know about the quarterback, but they do have weapons. But it's kind of like last year. What I could see with Florida is a roller coaster, and depending on what week you play them, that's what's going to happen. Like we saw when DJ Lagway played well, they could compete and beat people, including us. When he didn't, they got blown out. So that's probably going to happen next year as well, because I don't think their offensive line is going to be nearly as good. They lose a lot of those guys. The quarterback's probably going to be a little bit more healthy. The wide receivers are going to be a little bit better. Jane Ball is going to be obviously really good, and the defense is probably going to be a little bit better. And then toss-ups, I mean, on the road at Tennessee, on the road at Missouri, on the road at LSU, on the road at A&M. Those are 4 really hard road games. I mean, 3 out of those 4 teams are going to be ranked most likely. I think it's a toss-up between Tennessee and Missouri. One of those teams will probably end up ranked. And then LSU and A&M are obviously going to be ranked. So it's going to be really hard. It's funny because Steve Sarkisian does great versus the rivals. Like he kills Oklahoma, he kills Texas A&M. I think we'll be fine in those games. The game that worries me the most, I agree with you, is at LSU. But that's a big thing too, because Sam Levitt is a good quarterback. But if he is not healthy, they're not going to be anywhere near the same team as they are with him, obviously. Even though they did get 2 guys in the portal, they're both pretty good. Longstreet from USC, and then I believe they got Clark.
Landon Clark.
Yeah, from Elon or something like that. Yeah. He's a good quarterback. So
who knows? Maybe Lane will pull off an FCS quarterback leading them to the playoff this time around. Who knows?
That's true. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. Ole Miss is another one of those teams. If Trinidad doesn't come back, you should beat them easily, in my opinion. But I agree with you. I think he's going to come back, and he's a really good player. So very, very interesting. But guys, you'll know week 2 what this Texas team is. If this Texas team is truly going to be a Final Four, what they should be, a team that makes the national championship, because again, that is my expectation for the next year, is making the national championship. You should beat Ohio State week 2 at home, period, point blank. With everything Ohio State has lost, with everything that's happened with I think that was a horrible hire they just made offense coordinator. I don't think that's going to work at all, because that is totally contradicting styles there between what Ryan Day wants to do and what Arthur Smith wants to do. It's not even close what they want to do. So someone's going to have to give in there. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, unless they're going to have a truly elite run game, I think that's going to be a step back on offense. You still have guys that are going to be absolute difference makers, but as you can see from the flag behind me, I'm not the biggest Arthur Smith guy. So at the end of the day, I didn't necessarily love the hire either. But that's always a dangerous team. But you're right. We'll know what this team is in week 2. And that was kind of the weird thing about this past season was you played them in week 1. You weren't sure if that was the team that they were. You weren't sure if that was going to be the team that we saw the rest of the season, or they were going to be able to kind of find their way out of the funk. You'll know what this team is because it's going to be a relatively experienced team at a lot of big time positions like tackle, like quarterback, and you're going to have a good idea in that Ohio State game if they're going to be capable of going to a national title or not.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And Ohio State doesn't have those freaks on defense anymore, guys. They'll have some guys step up as they always do. But I'm sorry, you can't replace Caleb Downs. That's someone you cannot replace. That guy cleans up so many mistakes on the back end. He's great at everything he does. He's the leader of that defense. That's a gigantic loss. I think you're not going to be able to replace Sonny Styles. I actually think he's going to be harder to replace than Arvell Reese. I think Arvell Reese is actually overrated in my opinion, but that's a whole different thing. So I do think Texas should. I'm not saying they will, but they should. If they're going to compete to win a national championship, you're going to have to start beating those type of teams because that's what we struggled against. Think about it. Final Four, had to go win the game, lost to Washington. Final Four, had to go win the game to beat and you had lost to Ohio State. Playing an SEC championship versus a team like Georgia, they don't beat those 1% teams. They beat all the other 99%. Really, the only game we can talk about that they haven't was Florida. That's it. Mm-hmm. They beat everyone else like that. So you have to start beating the Ohio States of the world, the Georgias of the world, the Indianas of the world, the Oregons of the world, if you're going to want to win a national championship. So week 2 is going to tell me everything I need to know. I agree with you. Right now, I'm going to go 10-2, but I could definitely say 11-1 by the time August rolls around. But right now, I'm going to go at 10-2. I think we probably lose to LSU, and I think we probably lose on the road at Tennessee or at Missouri, in my opinion. I think we're undefeated at home. I do think we beat Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the home atmosphere has become such a difference maker for this team, and Steve Sarkisian's kind of just made it the habit of winning at home. So I feel pretty confident about most of those home games. Whenever you go into Neyland, something weird is going to happen. So that's definitely one that you have to watch really closely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because they may not even have a quarterback worth anything next year. So I may change my mind on that. That's like the biggest question mark with them.
It'll be interesting to see what George McIntyre, I assume, what he looks like as the starter.
Yeah, again, guys, that's our early predictions. He's leaning 11-1, 10-2. I'm right now 10-2, but could go 11-1. So again, guys, let us know in the comments what you think. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. This has been the 86th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. Again, Tommy, first time being here. We really appreciate it. You will see him from here on out. You also see me as usual next Monday, hopefully not sounding like death, hopefully. So again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe. And as always, hook 'em.